Good evening, everyone. Today, I want to talk about something that sounds simple, but can be one of the hardest things we ever do: being true to ourselves. You see, we live in a world that teaches us from a very young age to fit in, to be likable, to be agreeable. And before we even realize it, we start editing ourselves, shaving off the edges that make us unique, hiding our real feelings, putting on masks just to feel accepted. But here's the truth. Every time you abandon a piece of yourself to make someone else comfortable, you lose a little of your soul. And that's a cost too heavy for any of us to bear. Being true to yourself is not about being perfect. It's not about always being right. It's about being real. It's about knowing who you are, owning your story, even the messy, complicated, unfiltered parts, and standing in your truth, even when your voice shakes. It's about showing up to your life whole, not fragmented. And it's about having the courage to say, this is who I am, and I will not shrink to make anyone else feel better. But here's what no one tells you. Being true to yourself requires deep vulnerability. Because when you stand in your truth, you make yourself visible, and visibility is risky. It means people might misunderstand you, judge you, or even walk away. But it also means you give the people who do love you the chance to know the real you, not the edited version. When we choose authenticity over approval, we begin to live with integrity and that kind of peace. It's worth every ounce of discomfort. So here's my invitation to you. Take off the mask. Let yourself be seen. Trust that you're worthy, not because you're perfect, but because you're real. And no matter how messy, that realness is beautiful. We live in a world that is constantly asking us to perform. From the time we're little, we are rewarded not for who we are, but for how well we fit into the mold. We learn early on which parts of ourselves get approval and which parts are a too much, a too quiet, or a too emotional. So what do? We start editing ourselves. We trade authenticity for acceptance, believing that if we show up as who we really are, we won't be loved. That's where the performing begins, not on a stage, but in everyday life. When we perform for approval, we put on masks that don't fit. Maybe you wear the mask of the overachiever, constantly hustling for worth. Or maybe it's the peacemaker, never ruffling feathers, even when your own boundaries are being trampled. Whatever the role, it becomes a performance. And after a while, you can forget who you were before the applause, or before the silence that made you afraid. The deeper tragedy isn't just losing touch with others. It's losing touch with yourself. Being true to yourself asks you to press pause on the performance. It's about waking up one day and saying, I don't want to live for someone else's approval anymore. That shift is powerful and terrifying. Because once you stop performing, you can't hide behind the mask. You have to meet the unfiltered version of you, the one who has needs, dreams, flaws, and wounds. And for many of us, that's unfamiliar territory. We've spent so long being who we should be that we forgot how to be who we are. The journey back to yourself is not clean or easy. It comes with grieving the years you spent pretending, the parts of you silenced, and the energy you used just to keep others comfortable. But in that grief, you'll also find clarity. Because when you stop editing yourself for approval, you start to hear your own voice again. Not the voice that asks, what do they want from me? But the one that asks, what do I want? What do I need? Who am I really? One of the hardest truths we face is this: people might not like the real you. Some will walk away. Some might criticize. That's the cost of authenticity, but it's also the filter that reveals who truly belongs in your life. When you perform, people are drawn to your mask. When you're real, people are drawn to your heart. And let me tell you, the latter might be fewer, but they're deeper, richer, and more healing than you can imagine. Honoring your authentic identity means accepting that you're a full human being, not just the good, polished parts. It means embracing your messiness, your contradictions, your quiet moments, and your loud ones. It's telling yourself, I am allowed to be all of me, even if it makes others uncomfortable, especially if it makes others uncomfortable. Because you were not born to be anyone's projection. You were born to be a living, feeling human, flawed, yes, but also beautifully whole. When you stop performing and start honoring your truth, something magical happens. Your energy returns. Your creativity blooms. You laugh louder, cry deeper, rest more easily. Why? Because you're not exhausting yourself with pretense. You're not on guard all the time. You don't wake up wondering who you have to be today to be enough. You just are. And that's freedom. Not the loud kind that shouts, but the soft, quiet kind that says, I'm home. And here's the wild part. When you are true to yourself, you give others permission to do the same. Your authenticity becomes a lighthouse. Others see your light and realize they don't have to keep hiding either. The world doesn't change because we shout louder. It changes because we start showing up, raw, honest, and unmasked. That's where real connection begins. That's where real life begins. Belonging is one of the deepest human needs. We are wired to connect. It's in our DNA. But somewhere along the way, many of us confuse fitting in with belonging. We think that if we can just blend in, just say the right things, wear the right mask, or show up the way people expect us to, then maybe we'll be accepted. Maybe we'll finally feel seen. But the truth is, fitting in is not belonging. It's a hollow substitute. And the price of that substitution is our authenticity. When you prioritize fitting in, you start to bend yourself to match the crowd. You shrink your opinions. You silence your truth. You start nodding when your gut says no and laughing at things that don't sit right with your soul. You become a version of yourself that's palatable to others but foreign to you. And for a while, it might work. You might get invited to the table. You might even feel popular or admired. But deep down, there's a nagging ache that never goes away because you know you're not being true. That ache? It's the disconnection from your own self. It's the soul's quiet protest. We're taught that peace comes from keeping things smooth, from avoiding conflict, from being easy to get along with. But real peace, lasting peace, comes only when we live in alignment with our values, even when it's inconvenient, even when it costs us approval. Fitting in might keep things calm on the outside, but it creates a storm within, and no amount of external praise can silence that inner storm. The truth is, belonging starts with self-belonging. You can't feel at home with others if you're homeless within yourself. If you constantly abandon your truth for the sake of being liked, you begin to feel like a stranger in your own life. That's when anxiety creeps in. That's when self-doubt becomes a constant companion. Because on some level, you know you've betrayed the most important person you'll ever know. Here's where the shift begins. When you realize that belonging doesn't require you to change who you are, but to be who you are. It's not about gaining a seat at every table. It's about building your own table and inviting people who truly see you. It's about showing up without the mask and trusting that the people meant for you will stay, and the ones who leave were never your people to begin with. The fear of rejection is powerful. It convinces us that if we show up fully, we'll be too much, too weird, too emotional, too loud, or too quiet, so we water ourselves down. We sand off our edges, and yet the ironic twist is this. The very thing we fear, being left out, is exactly what happens when we're not real. Because we might be surrounded by people, but we still feel profoundly alone. Belonging isn't found in the spaces where you're tolerated. It's found in the places where you're celebrated, where you don't have to earn love by performing or pretending. When we start telling the truth about who we are, what we feel, and what we need, we risk being rejected. But we also open the door to real connection. Vulnerability is the bridge, and honesty is the path. So no, fitting in doesn't bring peace. It brings silence, the dangerous kind. The kind where your voice is muffled, your needs are ignored, and your truth is buried. But belonging brings healing. Belonging brings joy. Not the performative kind, but the kind that lives deep in your bones. And it starts the moment you stop trying to fit in and start learning to stand in your truth. So many of us confuse authenticity with perfection. We think that to be a real, we must also be flawless, always calm, always wise, always certain. But that's not authenticity. That's performance dressed up as vulnerability. Real authenticity doesn't come from having it all together. It comes from having the courage to be seen, especially when we don't have it all together. Wholeness, not perfection, is the goal. Wholeness means owning every part of your story, the light and the shadows. It means not having to hide your fear, your doubt, your grief, your anger, or your tenderness. It means saying, this is all of me. Not just the curated highlight reel, but the behind-the-scenes moments. And that's where vulnerability steps in. Because revealing our full selves requires a kind of bravery that doesn't always feel good. It often feels raw, uncertain, and uncomfortable. But it's also where freedom lives. When we strive for perfection, we build walls around ourselves. We create an image that might win us admiration, but never intimacy. Perfection repels connection because it's a performance. It's exhausting and it's a lie because no one is perfect. And deep down, we know that. So when we pretend to be, we live in constant fear of being found out. That fear keeps us isolated even when we're surrounded by people. Authenticity, on the other hand, invites connection, not because it makes us look good, but because it makes us real. Vulnerability is the bridge between us and others. It's what turns conversations into connection, and it's what allows others to say, me too. When you share your imperfections, your struggles, your messy middle, you don't lose respect, you earn trust. Because people don't trust perfect, they trust real. Wholeness also means refusing to compartmentalize yourself. You are not just your achievements or your job title or your Instagram aesthetic. You are your dreams, your heartbreaks, your childhood wounds, your belly laughs, your moments of silence, and your burst of passion. To be authentic is to welcome every part of you to the table, even the parts you were once told were too much or not enough. That kind of living requires intention. You have to check in with yourself and ask, am I showing up in this moment as who I truly am, or as who I think I should be? Am I speaking from my heart or from fear of judgment? It's not about being raw all the time or oversharing. It's about alignment. It's about letting your values, not your fears, guide your behavior. It's about being rooted, not rehearsed. And here's the beautiful paradox. The more we let go of the need to be perfect, the more we are able to be present. Perfection is a moving target. It always tells us we're not quite there yet. But authenticity lets us arrive again and again exactly as we are. It says you're allowed to be a work in progress and still be worthy of love. That's not weakness, that's strength. So if you're waiting to be perfect before you show up, stop. Show up messy. Show up honest. Show up with your shaking hands and your full heart. You don't need to be perfect to be powerful. You just need to be real. Because authenticity, in all its imperfections, is what makes us beautifully human. There is a subtle, silent kind of self-abandonment that happens every time we pretend to be okay when we're not, every time we laugh at a joke that hurts us or say yes when every cell in our body is screaming a no. We often dismiss these moments as minor, as if they don't matter, but they do. Every time you hide a part of yourself to make someone else feel more comfortable, you chip away at your own truth. And truth, once chipped away enough, begins to feel far away and unreachable. The heartbreaking part is that most of us don't even notice it happening. It starts with small compromises, agreeing just to keep the peace, avoiding conflict, staying silent so we're not labeled a too much. But those small compromises become habits. And over time, we forget where the performance ends and the realness begins. We become disconnected from our core, not because we're weak, but because we've been trained to survive by pleasing others. Pleasing others might make you likable, but it doesn't make you whole. There's a big difference between being liked and being known. And when we constantly shape-shift to be what others expect, we lose access to our authentic self. We become experts at reading the room, but strangers to reading our own hearts. And that loss is more than emotional, it's spiritual. It leaves us feeling empty, restless, unsure of who we are when no one's watching. The further we drift from our core, the harder it becomes to trust ourselves. We start second-guessing our decisions, our desires, our intuition. We think, maybe I'm being too sensitive, or maybe I should just let this go. But often, what we're really doing is gaslighting ourselves into ignoring our needs. When we repeatedly ignore our feelings for the sake of harmony, we start to believe our feelings aren't valid at all. That's not peace, sir. That's self-erasure. Coming back to your core requires honesty, the kind that doesn't always feel good. You have to look at where you've been abandoning yourself, where you've said I'm fine when you were breaking, where you've agreed just to avoid tension. And then you have to offer yourself compassion, not shame. Because hiding your truth doesn't make you a liar. It makes you human. It means you were trying to survive, and now you're trying to heal. Reconnecting to your core also means creating space for your truth to breathe. It might feel unfamiliar at first. You might feel guilt or fear. But with practice, your truth becomes louder than your fear. You begin to notice your own patterns, your own voice, your own rhythm. You stop looking outward for who you should be and begin tuning inward to who you've always been. That's not rebellion. That's reconnection. And here's the hard but liberating part. Not everyone will like the real you. Some people like the version of you that played small, that said yes, that didn't challenge the status quo. And when you stop hiding, they might pull away. That's painful, but it's also clarity, because the people who love you for your whole self are the ones you're meant to walk with. The rest were just passing through. So the next time you're tempted to hide, pause. Ask yourself, is the silence costing me a piece of my truth? You are allowed to take up space. You are allowed to be honest, and you are allowed to be whole, even if that makes someone else uncomfortable. Because the moment you stop hiding is the moment you start coming home to yourself.